Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today, the top 10 high-ranking officials who talked frankly about extraterrestrials. For the first time since Roswell, coverage of UFOs has entered serious mainstream media, featuring even on the front page of the New York Times in December of 2017. And while that story was more about tax dollars than extraterrestrials themselves, it illuminated some of the otherworldly beliefs and perhaps even knowledge that exist at the highest levels of government. But just how surprising is this news really? In the video today, we're looking at 10 high-ranking officials who, at one time or another, and in some cases over and over again, have talked frankly about the existence of aliens. Number 10. Eric Gairy, Prime Minister of Grenada from 1974 to 1979. On November the 27th, 1978, Prime Minister of Grenada, Sir Eric Gairy, led a delegation to the UN to discuss the urgent problem of UFOs. According to a cable published by WikiLeaks, Gairy considered the issue to be of worldwide importance and significance, warranting serious consideration by world leaders, especially in light of the apparent abduction of Frederick Valentich over Australia in the previous month. Memorably, Gairy called upon the United Nations to come alive to its responsibility and take a serious look at the UFO phenomenon to which planet Earth has been conspicuously exposed since 1947. In addition to his own Minister for Education, he was joined by the UFO experts Dr. Jacques Vallée and Staunton Friedman, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Larry Coyne, each of whom testified to the reality of the UFO phenomenon. Friedman even went so far as to speculate on their motivations, that was keeping tabs on us in the knowledge that we'll soon go interstellar. A letter from astronaut L. Gordon Cooper was also read aloud. In it, he claimed to have seen formations of UFOs in the 1950s and argued that more qualified professionals would come forward if the UN pursued the issue. In a somewhat amusing twist, though, when campaigning about UFOs in the United States, Gairy was overthrown back home in a Marxist-Leninist revolution, despite having left his thuggish mongoose gang in charge, and he found himself stranded abroad. Number 9. Miyuki Hatoyama, spouse of the Prime Minister of Japan from 2009 to 2010. Miyuki Hatoyama was the first wife of any Japanese Prime Minister to assume a more active and outspoken First Lady-style role in public. But she was already well known in Japan. Nicknamed Mrs. Occult for her strange beliefs, she wrote a monthly column on paranormal phenomenon for Moo magazine and frequently discussed her lifestyle on TV. Among other things, she said that she eats the sun every morning for energy and that she met Tom Cruise in a past life when he was Japanese. But her most outrageous claim to date comes from her 2008 book, Very Strange Things I've Encountered. While asleep one night in 1989, she wrote, her soul was abducted and taken to Venus, a very beautiful, very green place apparently, aboard a triangular-shaped UFO. Although her husband's otherworldly manner and prominent eyes have earned him the nickname the Alien, he was bewildered by his wife's account. Believing in UFOs was one thing, he said that her trip was probably a dream. Nevertheless, he apparently joins her in eating the sun every day and draws energy from his wife's eccentricity. Number 8. Kazem Finjan, Iraqi Minister of Transport from 2006 to the present. Iraqi Transport Minister Kazem Finjan evidently has a thing about airports. Last year he caused an uproar for almost crash landing a passenger plane on a runway in Basra, having taken over the controls on a whim. And the year before he made international headlines for claiming that the world's first airport was built in Iraq 5,000 years ago, or 3,000 years before Christ. According to him, it served as a base from which ancient Sumerian astronauts took off and explored the solar system. Finjan made his claims at a press conference in the southern governorate of Dakar, where a new airport was to be built. The site was selected by the ancient Sumerians, he said, because of its favorable meteorological conditions, allowing ancient astronauts to take off, land, and maneuver with safety and ease. Traveling to the outer reaches of the solar system, the Sumerians were allegedly the first to discover the hypothetical planet X, a potentially massive body beyond Pluto that Finjan, citing Zachariah Sitchin, called the 12th planet, or Nibiru. Sitchin, of course, is well known for his ancient alien theories. In his 1976 book, The 12th Planet, he argued that Homo sapiens are a genetically engineered slave race created by the extraterrestrial Anunnaki, or Nephilim. The idea behind this was that human beings would be used to mine gold. These gods, he wrote, first came to Earth from Nibiru 450,000 years ago in search of the precious metal which they needed in order to make a protective gold particle shield in the upper atmosphere of their planet. Number 7. Jimmy Carter, President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. Jimmy Carter filed his UFO report when he was still just the governor of Georgia in 1973, a few years before starting his presidency. The incident itself occurred in 1969 and was witnessed by several other people as they all stood waiting for a Lions Club meeting in the small town of Leary, Georgia. According to Carter, a green light suddenly appeared in the western sky just after sundown, hovering around 30 degrees over the horizon and gradually moving towards them. It then came to a halt behind some pine trees and changed its color to blue, then red, then white, before disappearing into the distance entirely. As a trained scientist and amateur astronomer, Carter rejected outright the suggestion that what he was looking at was Venus, but neither did he believe that it was aliens, insisting instead that what he saw was just an intangible light. Even so, he's never been able to explain the sighting, and it left such an impression on him that he vowed to never ridicule UFO witnesses again. He even promised during his presidential campaign to release every piece of information he could find, although he later reneged on the grounds of national security. Nevertheless, he did make some inquiries once he got into office, asking the Air Force, Army, and Pentagon about what he saw, but ultimately getting no answers. NASA also refused to investigate. Number 6. Paul Hellyer, Canadian Minister of National Defence from 1963 to 1967. Like many old-school politicians, Paul Hellyer was long out of office before making outrageous claims. His last two government positions as Canada's Minister of National Defence and Minister of Transport ended in 1967 and 1969 respectively, and it wasn't until 2005 that he brought up the topic of aliens, although he did open a largely symbolic UFO landing pad in St. Paul, Alberta, aka Stargate Alpha, in 1967. Nevertheless, he remains on the Privy Council for Canada as one of its longest-serving members. So, when he declared in September of 2005 that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead, he became the first statesman of cabinet rank from any G8 country to do so. Since then, Hellyer has repeatedly called for UFO disclosure, arguing that classified alien technology could help us tackle climate change. This technology, he says, was originally procured, alongside flying saucers and weapons systems, in exchange for President Truman's consent for ETs to abduct US citizens. According to Hellyer, several species of aliens, or extraterrestrial biological entities as the government allegedly calls them, have been visiting the Earth for thousands of years. Some originate from within our own solar system and look just like us, while others, such as the Greys, come from further afield. One thing they all have in common, though, is a deep concern over our poor stewardship of the planet, and in particular, our possession of nukes. Number 5. Dmitry Medvedev, President of Russia from 2008 to 2012, Prime Minister of Russia from 2012 to the present. Nobody really knows whether Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev meant it when he said it off the air in 2012 that he believes in Father Frost, the Russian version of Santa Claus, and nobody's quite sure what to make of his alien comments either. Speaking to reporters after a televised press conference, Medvedev, then just former president of Russia Medvedev, was asked about classified files. Along with the briefcase with nuclear codes, he replied, the president of the country is given a special top-secret folder which contains information about aliens who visited our planet. This information, he said, is accompanied by a report on the absolutely secret special service that monitors and controls ETs in Russia. He stopped short of saying exactly how many there were, however, out of fear that it may cause panic. Although Medvedev is generally thought to have been joking, witnesses said he looked to be serious. He was also apparently pretty candid on other touchy subjects, calling federal investigators jerks and rejecting the 2012 end date. Furthermore, the well-known movie Men in Black that he referred journalists to for more detailed information was probably not, as many assumed, the Will Smith version, but a Russian documentary of roughly the same name. For what it's worth, the film echoes Paul Hellyer's claims about secret abduction deals made by US presidents in exchange for alien technology. Of course, Medvedev is unlikely to have disclosed such well-kept state secrets so casually to the press, whether on the record or not, but his comments did cause a hubbub on the internet. Number 4. Kazem Ilyumzhinov, President of Kalmykia from 1993 to 2010. In any case, that wasn't the first time Dmitry Medvedev had been linked to extraterrestrials. He was urged by one of his MPs to investigate the claims of Kazem Ilyumzhinov, then president of the Republic of Kalmykia, part of the Russian Federation. In TV and radio interviews, the regional president had been claiming not only to believe in aliens, but actually to have been abducted by them. In 1997, he said beings in yellow spacesuits took him aboard an enormous flying saucer and flew him to distant planets, landing on one to pick up equipment. Although the aliens described everything they were doing in detail, Ilyumzhinov regrets not asking more questions. Apparently, he was too preoccupied with getting back to Earth in time to conduct Youth Government Week. Intriguingly, in his letter to President Medvedev, the concerned MP was less worried about his leader's mental stability and more about following official protocol for reporting alien contact. He also feared Ilyumzhinov may have inadvertently revealed state secrets to the spacefaring visitors. For his part, Ilyumzhinov continues to believe in ETs and even claims they invented chess, which is interesting considering he's been president of the World Chess Federation since 1995. Number 3. John Podesta, White House Chief of Staff from 1998 to 2001 and Counselor to the President from 2014 to 2015. UFOs, or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, as Hillary Clinton calls them, were something of an up-and-coming issue in the 2016 presidential election, with the Democratic candidate pledging to reopen and disclose any relevant files. But her campaign chairman, John Podesta, was advocating for disclosure many years earlier. Speaking at a press conference in 2002, shortly after serving as Bill Clinton's White House Chief of Staff, he declared it was time for the government to declassify records that are more than 25 years old,
because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth.
He also wrote the foreword to ufologist Leslie Kean's 2010 book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Even more interestingly, leaked private emails from 2015 reveal a bizarre correspondence between Podesta and the astronaut-turned-ufologist Edgar Mitchell. Among other things, the pair were discussing zero-point energy, which according to Mitchell, we'll be able to learn from the aliens, but only once we stop waging wars. Number 2. Fife Symington, Governor of Arizona from 1991 to 1997. Pretty much everyone else on this list was basically alone in their claims, backed up, if at all, only by a ragtag fringe community of fellow UFO fanatics. Not so, though, for Fife Symington, who served as the governor of Arizona for most of the 1990s. In March 1997, he and hundreds, or even thousands of others, saw a huge V-shaped craft flying extraordinarily low overhead, so close they could almost touch it as it slowly and silently traversed the state. According to some witnesses, it looked to be over a mile wide. The encounter, which involved a number of blinking orbs passing over the Capitol and disappearing into the mountains, came to be known as the Phoenix Lights. It remains one of the most noteworthy UFO sightings in history and certainly one of the most widely reported, with many citizens having been outside that night looking for the Hale-Bopp comet. Incidentally, this comet was believed by the Heaven's Gate UFO cult, 39 members of which killed themselves 11 days later, to have extraterrestrials in tow. Governor Symington famously made light of the phenomenon at the time, dressing his chief of staff up as an alien and presenting him as the culprit at a press conference. Before unmasking his stooge, he told his audience,
"This just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious."
10 years later, however, his name already tarnished by convictions for bank fraud, Symington changed his tune. Dismissing the official explanation of the lights as just flares, he apologized to his former constituents and admitted to having seen the massive delta-shaped craft for himself. As a pilot and former Air Force officer, he said he could tell it was unlike anything used by the military. He also went on to urge the government to stop putting out stories that perpetuate the myth that all UFOs can be explained away in down-to-earth conventional terms, and called for more openness in government, especially our own. Number 1. Christopher K. Mellon, U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence from 1999 to 2002. As a member of the influential Mellon family, Christopher K. is practically American royalty, descended from the same Pittsburgh judges, industrialists, and financiers who helped shape American history. His own career has involved a number of high-level intelligence positions at the Pentagon, including Coordinator for Advanced Concepts and Program Integration from 1997 to 1998, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Security and Information Operations from 1998 to 1999, and Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for Intelligence from 1999 to 2002. He also spent nearly 10 years on the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, reporting back to the Senate on various classified programs, including Area 51. Needless to say, he's been trusted with a great many secrets over the years. Indeed, a photo of Mellon standing next to former Secretary of Defense Bill Cohen was addressed by the latter to say, "To Chris Mellon, the other man who kept all the secrets." So it may be telling that he's now on the boards of UFO Data, a crowdsourced UFO surveillance network, and to the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. This is Tom DeLonge's seemingly harebrained scheme to bridge science fiction and reality by way of alien technology. Even so, Mellon highly doubts the government's involvement in UFO cover-ups, insisting that Area 51 has nothing to do with aliens. In fact, despite compelling eyewitness testimony and recorded video evidence, including from the Maui Optic Tracking Facility, government officials, he says, have remained frustratingly uninterested in the phenomenon. As for whether UFOs might be experimental military craft, Mellon categorically states that the DoD has never had anything like them. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Do not forget to subscribe. Brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also over there on the right, some videos from the archives. And as always, thank you for watching.